Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm the Associate Features Editor at Variety. I'm so thrilled, maybe as excited as you guys are, to be here at this SAG Foundation conversation with Matthew McConaughey. Since his film debut in Dazed and Confused, this is an actor who has continued to entertain, touch, and surprise us in a wide range of roles, from films as varied as A Time to Kill, Magic Mike, Killer Joe, and of course, Dallas Buyers Club. He's coming off an incredible year, topped by his phenomenal performance as Ron Woodruff, which just last night won him the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor. If that wasn't enough, last night also marked the premiere of his new HBO show, True Detective, to phenomenal ratings. Someone who is having a very good 24 hours, let's keep it going. Please welcome Matthew McConaughey.
I'm having a good 24 hours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
Congratulations on a great 24 hours, but a great career. I just want to start off by asking, what went through your mind when your name was called last night?
Well, I remember exactly what happened. Didn't think I was going to win. And then you have that idea of like, well, what if I do? What am I going to say? And then you start going through your head, well, maybe I want to think. As soon as I do that, I'm like, well, that's going to coup de grace for sure. If you're preparing a speech for something you had won, you're definitely not going to win it. So I'm like, just gotta enjoy this role. And then they get up there, and all of a sudden it was that category. And I heard Best Actor in Drama, and I heard Matt, and all I heard was then applause, and I wasn't sure. And I laid my head back, and I went through my head, I went, Chewy Tail, Robert, Tom, Idris. No, neither one of those start with an M and an A, okay. Yeah, that's a true story.
Thank God there wasn't a write-in vote for Matt Damon.
You're right.
I want to start at the beginning of your career. From what I understand, growing up in Texas, you weren't one of those kids who set out to be an actor.
No, it wasn't even in the vernacular of my dreams. Honestly, I'd never even dreamed about it because it just wasn't something I could even concretely even think about. I was raised in Texas. I got two older brothers. It was always you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you work your way up a ladder. So it was a much more practical approach to how most people make a living. We weren't turned away from it or anything. I mean, later on in life, I then find out, and I've done my own investigations about why have I come to love this, what I'm doing, and I found old stuff. My dad did draw. He did paint. He did do sculptures, but we never knew what he was doing. After we went to bed, he went to the garage and did these things. We never knew that. And my dad had a really nice art collection. We never talked art or had art in the house. So yeah, I went to school, went to the University of Texas, and I was headed towards law school. And I had a friend, and I was uncomfortable with it because it was coming on the end of my sophomore year. And I was uncomfortable with the idea of going, okay, you graduate, then you go to law school, you get out when you're 28, basically you're in your early 30s when you can make any sort of imprint or have an opinion in society. And I had a friend, Rob Bendler, who directed the documentary Hands on a Hard Body, if you ever saw that. It's a great documentary. He was at NYU and going to film school. And he sort of gave me some of the courage of saying, hey, you know what, you're a great storyteller, and you know, you've got, I don't know if it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, but I'm loving this, what I'm doing at NYU. And then that and finding a book, The Greatest Sales in the World, gave me the courage to call mom and dad and say, hey, I'd like to go to, and I had to clear my film school. And there was a long pause. And I remember my dad, after about 8 seconds, he goes, is that what you want to do? I said, yes, sir. He goes, well, don't half-ass it. And it was all.
And from what I understand, you weren't someone who went to the movie theater a lot as a kid. I think you said you only went twice?
I saw 2 movies before I was 17. King Kong and Orca. And I cried at the end of King Kong because I really thought Jessica Lange and King Kong could work it out. I really did. I've always rooted for the underdog that way, and those odd love stories. And then Orca just pissed me off because the poster was this huge killer whale. and there are these little stick figures of men, harpoons and stuff in them. And I went to the movie, and Orca was about, you know, from me to you. And I was like, so that didn't like turn me off of films, but I just didn't. We had one theater in town, and it was just not a, I take it back, there was 3 pictures. At 17, I didn't even get to watch this one though. I got dragged out of this one by my mother 8 minutes into it, Caligula.
Which one?
I snuck off to Caligula, and I was so excited about it, and all of a sudden there was a yank on my arm, and that was my mom yanking me out of it. Yeah.
But you saw enough to scar you for life.
I saw enough to make it worth risking going and getting that 8 minutes. And then later on in college, I then started to watch films and appreciate them. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. Yeah. It's not an acting book.
No.
What was it about that changed your whole career path?
You know, I mean, I was always one that school, if someone told me what you got to do, it's much easier to find something, a piece of art or a book it finds you. You know, but someone tells you got to read this. You better read this. It's like, I'm already getting it secondhand. This was, it's a great little story about how it found me. I was at the end of my sophomore year. I was going to my exams. I made all A's. I was a real study bug. I had a 3.82 GPA, and I would always, any amount of time I had to study, I would use all of it. For whatever reason, this day, I'm over there, I go to a friend's house. It's near the class where I go take the test. I've got 3 hours left. For whatever reason, I don't want to study anymore. I go, you got this, McConaughey. I shut my books. He's got a TV. I didn't have cable. He's got a TV. I put on ESPN. I'll watch the strongest man in the world competition. And for whatever reason, this day, I did not want to watch any sports. So I'm not studying. I don't have any sports. What's another thing that I really like at this time? I look over, there's a stack of Playboys. I'm like, well, this is another interest of mine. For whatever reason, I flipped down through 7 different Playboys and not into that. And this book is there, and it's got red writing. It says, The Greatest Salesman in the World. And I remember grabbing it and going, well, who's that? And I sat down and started reading, lost all track of time. 2 hours later, I got to the first chapter. Anyway, it's a book that you have to read 10 scrolls, each scroll 3 times a day for 30 days before you can go to the next scroll. And it's about, it's life. It's stuff we learned in kindergarten that we've since forgotten. It's just a real practice of good habits and being a good person. So that gave me, then I went and took my exam. Then later that night was when I made that call with my family and said I want to go to film school. But that book finding me at that time in my life, I felt like I had a secret. I felt like I had a secret weapon that was going to help me, give me the courage to head off in a new direction into the storytelling business. And I got into film school based on my GPA. I didn't have a film or anything, so going and making those grades is what got me into film school, because I didn't have anything to really show them artistically. And once I got in, I was happy with a couple of documentaries I made, but then, and we'll get to this later, but in between that junior and senior year was when I got in Dazed and Confused, which was the best film school I could have ever gone to.
Prior to Dazed and Confused, you did some commercials, I believe?
Yeah, I did I was in a Miller Lite commercial for that long. It was more of a modeling job. But I'll tell you this though, I used to chew my nails continuously. I had nothing. And this lady told me, she goes, you got really nice hands, but your nails are horrible. She goes, I think I could get you a hand modeling job if you quit chewing your nails. I said, how much does that pay? $120. I've never chewed my nails since. Got that job too.
I'll give you.
That was as much as 2 nights I was working. I was a waiter at an all-black blues bar, and the most ever made because all the staff didn't want that one white guy waiting on them. The most ever made was $72 a night. So I remember that $120 being a big coup.
What was the impetus to get in front of the camera? I mean, did you have to go out and audition for these commercials?
I did. I wore a pager in those last 2 years when I was in film school, and I was in the honors classes, and part of it was attendance. But in the summer I worked at a local advertising house called Zopix. I was an intern there for free, so I worked there for a few months, and then I was trying to get some PA work around town, and then anything I could get outside of class that had to do with either in front of the camera or behind the camera, I was going to go do it. And I remember the other teachers going, but you got to understand, attendance is a biggie here. And I was like, look, if my pager goes off, and we're in the middle class, and they want me to audition for that Dwight Yoakam video in Dallas, I'm out of here, and I'm going to go give it a shot. And they were like, well, anyway, I told them, I said, I'll be here for the exams. I promise you I'll just be here for the exams. And thankfully, they all gave me C's. Because my attendance was horrible, but they gave me C's, I think.
Now, from what I understand, you actually were looking to do PA work on Dazed and Confused, and it led to a job.
Well, I was looking for PA work. I was looking for, I was getting some PA jobs around town on some other smaller stuff, some video shoots and things that were shooting in Austin. And Dazed, actually the PA work was why when I came out to Los Angeles, I had I'd written letters, and I had on paper a PA job on a Coen Brothers film. I don't even remember which film it was. It got pushed. It got pushed as I drove out, and I was running out of money out here. But to go back the year, the Dazed job came from I was in the right bar at the right time. Met the bartender who gave me free drinks. Said there's a guy at the end of the bar. He's a producer. He's in town. I went and introduced myself. He was a casting director named Don Phillips, legendary casting director. And he, at the end of the night, said, you haven't done any acting. And I said, this Miller Lite commercial for that long and that hand. And he goes, you might be right for this role. And I went down. He said, come down to this address, and I'll have a script for you. And there it was, Dazed and Confused. I picked it up at 9:30 that morning. Went back home to Longview, worked with that guy, Rob Bimler, who was at NYU. David Wooderson, there were 3 lines. And I worked on him for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and I felt like, I know who this guy is. And it was a character, in my mind, the guy was who I thought my brother was when I was 11. You know that romanticized idea? My brother was cooler than James Dean. He was 7 feet tall. His Z-28 was the fastest rocket in the world. His Concorde system with a Tancredi equalizer was better than Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. And I saw him leaning against the wall at the smoking section one day when my mom went to pick him up, and I went there, and I didn't say anything because he was going to get in trouble if he was smoking, but he was so cool against the wall. And that's who Wooderson was. It wasn't, and now my brother to this day keeps going like, thanks, man. And I'm like, no, it wasn't really you, but it's who I thought you were when I was 11.
There's been rumors forever of a Dazed and Confused sequel. Do you know where that stands?
That's been talked about, and Linklater, Richard, the writer and director, has continued to speak about it. I don't know if it's ever really going to happen. It doesn't really seem to work if you didn't bring back the full boat and everybody was really into coming back. We've talked about it. I've talked with Rick about it several times, though.
Where do you think David Wooderson ended up?
We have differing opinions. I mean, we have similar opinions. I think Rick and I both think he's got 3 daughters. Maybe triplets. And he's married, and I was always like, I think he's maybe podcasting a midnight radio show from his house. I think it'd be pretty fun, Wooderson. And as Rick said, yeah, but in the daytime, still working for the city, keeping a little change in his pocket.
I want to see this movie.
I'd like to see it, too.
I'm sold on this now. Your next film, I think, was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Yes.
Massacre, The Next Generation.
This is you saw that?
I love this movie.
The Next Generation.
I love this movie. I'm a horror fanatic.
Oh,
yeah.
It's fun. Now,
Yeah,
let me tell
it's
you
a
how
really
this
fun
job
movie.
happens. This is a really fun one. I'm packed up now. I've graduated. I've got my 4-cylinder blue truck. I've got my $3,500 to my name. I've got my U-Haul in the back of my truck. I'm going out west to sleep on Don Phillips' couch, that casting director, the one guy I knew out here, and I'm going to come out and sleep on his couch and start this PA job on this Coen Brothers picture. There's this Texas Chainsaw Massacre going on in town. Guy calls me in, says, I want you to play this part, where it's bookend. It's a Romeo character. He rides up at the beginning, sees Renee Zellweger come from school, and he rides off, and at the end, he picks her up, and she gets on the bike with him and rides away. It's one day's work. So great, I'll do it. I pull up to this house where the casting was with the U-Haul already packed up. I've got ice in the coolers ready for the journey west. I've got loaves of 62-cent wheat bread back there packed up in the ice chest for this journey out west, right? I got my Doors album, LA Woman, ready to play all that stuff, right? So as I'm about to leave, he goes, hey, I haven't been able to cast the main killer, Vilmer, yet. do you know anybody who would play it right? And I said, you know what? I knew these two guys that were in-town actors. I think those would be good choices. And he goes, all right, thank you. I get out, I walk out the door, shut the door, walk out down the path, open up the door of my truck. I remember very clearly. Stepped in the door frame and said, I want to read for this killer, man. Shut the door, went back in and said, I'd like to read for this killer. And he goes, great. And there was a secretary. And he goes, just really, really, really scare her. So I go in the kitchen, I get a spoon and come out and said and did a bunch of horrible things and scared her. And he goes, God, would you do it? And I was like, absolutely. So went to work on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, unpacked the U-Haul, went to work in Pflugerville with Renee Zellweger, and we beat the mess out of each other and worked 18-hour days and got paid a few $100s a day. It was great. And so I stayed another month and we shot that.
So the secretary that you threatened with a spoon.
Yeah.
When you were done, how was she? Did you?
No, she was great. She actually, I knew her. She had worked on sets as well. She had done some PA work, and so she was helping out. She actually ended up working on that crew.
So she was a good sport about it.
Oh yeah. Now that whole creative group there in Austin is with it in that way, and it's like, let's just make something work out. And I met all. It was all similar circles. You kind of worked with. At that time, when there was the Texas Tax Incentive, there were a lot more films shooting in Texas. And so you'd see the same crews, and you'd work with the same crews around, and there was a lot more film shooting in Austin. Hence now, most of those have gone to New Orleans and now to Atlanta. And a lot of those people that I have seen the last 2 years on crews were people that I worked with back in '92 in Dazed and Confused.
So even with these movies under your belt, you came out to LA and you were still thinking it was going to be for PA work.
I still thought it was going to be PA work. I mean, I didn't know. It was still, I was believing more. I mean, I sure did like what I was doing, and I had people, and I couldn't, honestly, at that time, the $320 I was getting, I was like, is this legal? Because it was so much fun, and I was really looking over my shoulder going, and I kept getting invited back. And then I'd have people come up and go, hey, man, you're good at this. And I was like, well, thanks, because it sure is fun. So I really didn't know. I guess secretly, if I look back and I look at my diaries, there was hope underlying, but I was still like, I need to go out and get a job. And if I can pursue acting on the side, get a PA job, get in the storytelling business behind the camera, and let's see. And then another funny thing happened. That first audition when I got out here was for a casting director named Hank McCann. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was for a film called Boys on the Side. And I went and read, and he goes, I think you did really good. I'll have you for a callback sometime later. I went off from there. I get called in for a baseball film, Angels in the Outfield. I walk in the door. There's a bunch of funny peculiarities about how the hell I got to be standing here today. I walk in the door, it was backlit. I remember I had an American cap on. It was on Warner Brothers Light. I open up the door, it was backlit in the afternoon. Producer's sitting on the couch. He looks up, he goes, hey, look at you. The all-American kid. He goes, you ever played baseball? I said, 12 years. He goes, you got the job. So they pay me Schedule F, $48,500 to go play baseball for 11 weeks in Oakland. Again, I'm going, what is this business? But it happened, and during that, I got called back to read for Herbert Ross for Boys on the Side and got that role. And so that Coen Brothers film that got pushed, that PA job that I would have taken if it was there, never happened, and I haven't PA'd since.
I think you actually owe the Coen brothers a make good. I think you need to...
Yeah, the film got bumped.
Yes. Have you ever told them about this?
I don't think I have.
Yeah.
I would like to, though, yeah.
You should have thanked him in your speech last night. Thanks for pushing that movie.
Then I'd have to explain it, and then those Globes would have played all that funny music real quick.
During these early years, I mean, you just told some amazing audition stories, but was it difficult? Did you have to take other survival jobs, or did you just go from job to job?
No, I went job to job. After Boys on the Side, I didn't work for a little while. Oh, here's another funny story. It's true.
You're like Forrest Gump of Hollywood. These, these crazy things that happen. I meant that as a compliment. I just realized calling someone Forrest Gump actually isn't flattering.
We're going to read that in bold print somewhere, right?
Sorry.
That's good. I've never been called that. So I do Boys on the Side. It was a very conservative and sort of rigid part. The guy was very much by the book because he took his name literally, Honest Abe. So I get out of there, and whatever that part was, I carried it over into my auditions, and I was tight. And I'd get 1, 2 callbacks, but would never get to the next plane. And it kept happening. And I kept coming away thinking, you didn't quite leave it all in there. And I was getting tight for some reason. I get a job on this movie where I'm supposed to play this drug lord on the Mexican border. And all of a sudden I'm trying to look for a new approach. Now I haven't taken acting class. I'm not sure what my craft is. I've just been a natural that's been getting hired, right? This is back in 93, 94. And I start going, well, I know what the problem is. You're studying too much. You're reading, you're getting too diligent on the scripts. Think back about how you got started, McConaughey. Dazed and Confused, you didn't have a script. You showed up, they invited you back, you rolled with it, you played the character, you knew your man, they put you in a situation, and if someone asked you something, you just said what your man would say. Okay? Brilliant, yeah. So I'm like, I'm not gonna read the script, I'm not reading the part, I know what the part is, and I will create this character in my mind, and when I get there, all I have to do is have a peek at the script, and then I'm like, well, that's exactly what I would say. And then I'm ready.
I know this ends well.
Yeah, it ends real well. I get there, loose as a goose. I know how this works. I know my man, I'm ready. So right before we're about to take, I said, let me see those sides, just to get a little pinch, just kind of where the director, where they want to go with this. Oh, shit. It was a 1.5-page monologue in Spanish. I felt this drip of sweat come up on the back of my neck, and I remember, for whatever reason, I said, can I have about 12 minutes? And I walked off. For whatever reason, I thought 12 minutes would be like enough for me to learn it, but not enough to be inconsiderate. It was bad. I haven't watched the movie. I'm not saying the name of it. I haven't watched the performance, but I learned that day. It was like, that was a foolish move. Kind of foolish.
Wait, you kept the part?
I did it. I did it 12 minutes later.
Wow. In Spanish?
In Spanish.
Had you spoken Spanish before?
I knew enough Spanish to get away with it poorly. Hey.
I guess it was in 1996. You had an amazing year. You got to appear in John Sayles' Lone Star.
Yeah.
Fantastic film. And then you were cast in the highly anticipated adaptation of John Grisham's A Time to Kill.
Yeah.
Thank
you. That was a great story.
This was pretty much, it's been compared to The Hunt for Scarlett O'Hara, that a somewhat unknown landed his role.
Well, this was another fun story. I get called in to go meet Joe Schumacher, the director, and it's for the role that Kiefer Sutherland played, the Klan member. And I had read the book, and I go in to meet him on that, and we're talking about it. And I had this planned when I went in the room, but I said, so, is it true Brad Pitt's playing Jake Brigance? And he goes, no, that's not true. Why? Who do you think should play Jake Brigance? I was smoking at the time. I went, I think I should. It wasn't a joint, it was a cigarette at the time. I was in his office. Maybe the story's funnier if you thought it was a joint, but it was a cigarette. And he starts laughing. He goes, I think that's a great idea, but let me tell you, that has never happened to me. I said, okay, great, got the other role, I'll go off. Well, it stuck with him, and he called me a few weeks later and said, I would like to screen test you for the role of Jake Brigance. And he said, he picked out a very odd location, and it was on Mother's Day. It was on a Sunday. He was like, I want to do it here at this time because it's not going to happen even if you do good, and I don't want it to go as a mark against your career that you came and auditioned and didn't get it, so we're just going to do it. And I went in there and read, and we did the final summation, and we did a couple of other scenes, and he was great with me. I mean, obviously I'm there, I'm nervous. Obviously there was the script at hand. We tried that, and then he would go, now just throw it down and just talk to the jury like you would. And it was blasphemous. It was stuff that wouldn't be said in courtroom, but it showed him that I could get to a certain place that he felt he needed. Now I do that, he goes, great, okay, goodbye. Not gonna happen, but goodbye. I got a few things that happen that go for me at this time. Sandra Bullock opens up and While You Were Sleeping. All of a sudden she can greenlight a movie over a weekend. It makes it a little easier for the studio to say, maybe we'll look at an unknown for this role. What else? Spacey had something go on at that time. So the things were happening that helped open up a window for me to get this opportunity. So anyway, then I get a call. I'm working on Lone Star. I'm on the border in Piedras Negras. It's 2 in the morning. I get a call from Joel Schumacher and John Grisham in the middle of the desert, and says, "We'd like you to be Jake Regans." And that was how that happened.
Wow. John Grisham even signed off on you.
He had to. He had approval over my role and the Carl Lee Haley role.
Amazing. But I mean, I'm sure you were overjoyed, but with that came a lot of media scrutiny. How did you handle that?
Well, I sure didn't think it was scrutiny at the time. I remember really laughing when I was in line at the supermarket. And I looked down, and I was on 2 covers of 2 magazines, and one of them said, Matthew McConaughey saves the movies. And I was like, and then I said, I'm buying those 2 magazines. And then so, yeah, it did go from, I've said this story before, and it is true. I remember the Friday before that movie opened, walking in the promenade in Santa Monica, and say 400 people in the promenade, 396 minding their own business, not minding what I'm doing. The other 4 maybe look at me because maybe a couple of them noticed me, maybe a couple others were looking at what I was wearing. That weekend when that film came out, that Monday I went back to the same place, and it was completely inverted. 396 people were going, that's Matthew McConaughey or whatever they, you know. And we saw him this weekend, and it completely inverted. And I remember what was unbalancing was all of a sudden the world was a mirror, and I'd really lost anonymity. And as we all know, actors, anonymity is a real, not a privilege, but it's necessary to do what we do, you know. And that anonymous soul, I had lost at that, and it was unbalancing. And the other thing that was unbalanced is that the Friday before, there were 100 scripts that I wanted. 99 were no's, and 1 was a yes. And then Monday, 3 days later, those same 199 were yeses, and 1 was a no. And I was all of a sudden going, I want to do all of these, man. Yet just 3 days ago, or give me some work. And so it had completely inverted, and I had to become very discerning and discriminate, but I also needed to get away. And I remember I did a good thing. I packed up and went off on my own to South America for a month and put myself in a place where nobody spoke the language. I didn't know anybody. And it was great for me because you got to get to a place, even today, you know, we have to get to places where our memory can catch up with us, where the truth can settle. And I was in the middle of all of it, enjoying it, but it was unbalancing for sure.
How does your agent feel when he has the hottest actor in America and he disappears for a month?
I just wasn't ever up for discussion.
Really?
No.
Have you been with the same agent since that film?
Reverted back? No, I haven't. I haven't. I've been with, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously, A Time to Kill changed your life. Yeah. All these amazing scripts came in. I think it's really fascinating you took 2 actually supporting roles after A Time to Kill. One was Amistad. I assume the appeal of working with Steven Spielberg attracted you to that.
Well, and also that was a time that and Contact, which I think is the next one, philanthropic endeavors. I thought that was history and topics of God and science that I was extremely interested in, and I felt were extremely important.
God's here, apparently. Sorry. That was perfect. See, you summoned him.
But they were both something that I was like, I am honored. I want to be a part. Those are important things to share. That's important art to share. And I said philanthropic. I remember writing it down. I had done, a lot of papers in college about the link between God and science, why it shouldn't be a paradox, etc. So I got to play the believing side of that, which was a supporting role with Jodie Foster in Contact. The other one with Amistad was, yes, Spielberg, but it was also in a really important story that I was honored. I wanted to be a part of that piece of storytelling about American history.
Jodie Foster has actually said she was a little surprised you took the role in Contact because in many ways it's the woman's role.
Yeah.
You're the love interest.
Her words, I think, were, you took the chick's role. Yeah. But it was like, yeah, and there was never a question. Those were very important to me. Mm-hmm. Those were very important on a being able to do a bunch of work and then going, I'm getting to work with some great filmmakers, but these are also important stories. I want to be a part of these important stories.
And at that point, did they both come as offers, or were you still having to take, I don't even know if it would be an audition, but a meeting?
No, I think, Spielberg and I had talked about Saving Private Ryan, the part Matt Damon played.
Really?
And I didn't think that was for me at that time. And then he came to me with Amistad. And then I had to go meet with Jodie and Bob Zemeckis a couple of times for the role of Palmer Joss in Contact, yes. And I remember I loaded in I pulled out all those papers I'd written in college, and I came in with books and everything. I was like, I know this subject I know this guy. And so, yeah, took a couple of meetings.
In 1998, you reteamed with Richard Linklater for the Newton Boys.
Yep.
You worked again with him again in a movie I absolutely adore, Bernie.
Yeah.
How do you think you two have changed over the years? And what's the secret to keeping a healthy working relationship?
I don't know. I don't know that we've changed much. If there's any relationship that I have, a working relationship, he and I would probably say we've stayed the same more than anyone else would recognize. I got my first acting class, my first filmmaking class with Rick on Dazed and Confused. And what I mean by that was I'm getting invited into scenes. This is the scenario. This is what's happening tonight. This is what I think you'd be doing. Let's roll. What I mean by that is I'm in scenes leaning against the wall and other characters just pitching me stuff in the middle of the scene. Just tossing me things. So it was incredibly collaborative, as collaborative as any film I've ever worked on. And it was the way when we do it and it works and it's really fun. It's the way it's supposed to be. And it's not always like that, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Rick and I, we become friends as well. I really trust him, and the time that we spend, he and I, in whatever room we shut the door and lock ourselves in pre-production to start. He'll get the script and I'll have script and we'll start reading, and I'll start reading. And I really trust his meter. Like for, Bernie, I chose not to go meet Danny Buck, the guy it was based on. Because what was on the page, I'd done that before, like in Newton Boys, I went and really studied Claude Stanouche, his character, he was the writer of the book, really studied the biography of the man, and even sat down with the man, listened to tapes and did all that. This, Bernie, I chose not to. It was a comedy, plus it was enough on page, my mind felt so full and my imagination was so full, I really took my meter off of Rick, who knew the Danny Buck very well. And he always, if it's a comedy especially, Rick, I trust him so inherently that he'll take me to the edge just before caricature. He'll take me just to that ceiling and then be like, no, but he'll push it. He'll still come with, he'll still have an idea like, well, I think he should wear plumpers, or, I think he'd have a wig. He'll still have fun ideas, but he'll take the character, and I trust him to go all the way just to where we'll come in underneath caricature.
After Newton Boys, you did your first comedy lead, beginning with Ed TV. Yeah. What drew you to that script? And is it strange to look at that movie now and think how eerily prescient it was to put a man's life on camera 24/7?
Well, I think, at that time, I remember Ron Howard coming out and pulled out a laptop and was like, look at this. I mean, I think our movie's really, really relevant because look, there's a website here, And this girl has a camera in the corner of her room and it's on 24/7. And she doesn't do anything. She either leaves or comes back and you have to subscribe to watch it, and maybe she'll get undressed, maybe she'll go to bed, maybe she'll come in and out, but nothing happens. Isn't that weird? We're all like, wow. That was the inception of that time. Now, did Truman Show come in afterwards?
I think it was like a year before.
It was a year before?
Yeah.
Well, that was one that touched on some of the similar subject, but ours was less fantastic, less fantasy, and more of, let's just say, what would happen in a real life. Regular guy gets a camera put on him, and you get paid for what happened. And there's a scene in that movie that I think really encapsulates what that movie was about. And it wasn't in the trailer, but maybe it could have been. It's when Woody's character, my brother, says, and I'm showing I'm not sure if I want to do it. He's like, hey man, how many chances do guys like us get?
Yeah.
That was the hook for me of the everyman saying, well, it sounds weird, but yeah, right? I mean, why not? You know? And so, yeah, that was fun, and I loved working with Ron. I remember, you know, he not only a decent guy, but a real humane guy, and I really enjoyed working with him on that film.
Was that where you first met Woody Harrelson?
I had met Woody a year earlier at a party briefly, and we had a shot of tequila together. But that's when I first really met Woody, and I remember he shows up in San Francisco, and he pulls up on his 10-speed in his bike shorts, bike shoes, and all this bike gear, and he carries his bike up the stairs, and you hear him with those bike shoes, the metal hitting the wood, and you know he was like, dude, take your shoes off. But Woody doesn't even mind that or think that. And he walks in with his bike, and all of a sudden Ron goes, okay, well listen, we're going to talk about maybe we got a little wardrobe fitting. And Woody goes like, no, I'm dressed. This is Rayford. This is his character. And he said, this is my character. This is it. He goes, I didn't just ride up here just to ride up here like this. I'm dressed. And that's when I went, okay, this guy's a classic.
You also appeared in the Wedding Planner
Wedding
that
Planner,
year, which, Freudian
like
slip
that
on my
one?
part. Yeah. It began a run of romantic comedies that includes How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, Failure to Launch.
Yeah.
Something that I love about your work in these movies, you're very natural. I know it's very easy to dismiss romantic comedies, but I think these are some of the hardest roles to play. Partially because you know the outcome.
Well, you definitely know the outcome. We know what's going to happen, and so we got to enjoy in those, getting from the beginning to the end. What's the fun in those? The fun in How to Lose a Guy is, you know, the audience is in on the joke with one of the characters that the other one doesn't know, and then vice versa. And so it's sort of an interactive play. And you know, the challenge with those, it is challenging because they're light, and they're supposed to be light. So your frequency, your bandwidth for emotions is pretty elevated, pretty buoyant, and it's not that wide. If you love too hard, or you know, scream too loud, or even laugh too loud, it bounces out of that bandwidth, and they're really hard to make it up to get back. You know, because you know you're gonna have the breakup scene. And if that's too hard, whoa, we got to get you, we're not going to believe you can get, we don't have time to get you back together. So if you start to really, one of the challenges in those is if you start to really try and if you get in any way, this Hamletian, I've got to mean it, well, you sunk the ship. You sink them. So the challenge is to keep them light. And the naturalness, it was my approach, and to just say, because it's so much about the banter, so much about the chemistry of the verbal ping pong that you have to play with the other. And you can't really, I don't think you should really take things literally as an actor in those, because again, they'll lose their flow. And Get Off of My Cloud is the song I sing when I'm working in some of those. You know, because they're never really about, maybe the guy works at that agency, but it's surely not a movie about his occupation. You know what I mean? Maybe the girl is an aspiring writer, but the movie's not about her writing abilities. I mean, those are these things to wrap up this little romance that we know is going to meet, get together. Someone's going to con one or the other. They're going to break up, and usually the guy will go chase the girl at the end. And one thing I just tried to really do was, many times they're written is the guy comes crawling back on all fours. Woe be me, I was no one without you. God, if you only take me back. And I remember always going, and I was always saying, I gotta walk back with dignity, man. I don't mind saying I'm sorry. I don't mind saying, hey, you wanna give this another shot? I don't mind any of that. But this crawl back guy, what woman wants that guy?
It's interesting to me, making something look natural, making something look effortless is so hard. What's the secret to that? I mean, would you say, you know, doing something like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is tougher in some ways than like Killer Joe?
Well, in some ways, sure. Killer Joe, an island of a man. There's a great freedom and relaxation that comes with a very clear identity. I don't need to pander to any. Killer Joe does not pander to anyone. He makes up his own rules. He needs order in the situation, and if there's chaos or bad language, he will repair it in his own way. Not considerate of anyone. Romantic comedy, and even a lot of certain heroes, they're built to be considerate. You have to wear different hats. You have to placate and pander and listen to this side and listen to that side and maybe be wrong here, then have an arc to go the other way. Something like a Killer Joe, it's a different kind of commitment. It's a different, muscles to stretch. But once I was locked in on Killer Joe, it was like I just kept it on microvision and said, don't, just keep it. You're about order. That's it, order at any turn. Order. You don't need to, you're not here to get along with anyone. So there's a freedom that comes with that, but there's also, you sort of abandon, it's not like you're doing monologues, but you abandon the idea of having to get along. And part of the deal in romantic comedies, you gotta kind of get along. Like I said, you can't really get that mad that you don't recover to ever come back. And the couple gets together. So it's about the buoyancy in those.
Before I get to some of your current films, I just, for my own personal reference, want to talk about a movie I adore that you made in 2002 called Frailty.
Yeah,
with
Frailty.
Bill Paxton. Yeah, this movie is such a unique and original script. I can't believe that they went there, that they did that with the ending. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but if you haven't seen it, you shouldn't be here, really. So
there's a small subculture of friends that I talk to that really adore Frailty. Brent Hanley was a friend of mine. He's the writer. And he turned me on to that early on. I've always liked his writing.
Was that what drew you to the script, or was it Bill Paxton directing?
Well, it was mainly Hanley's writing, and then Paxton came on. And I'm not sure exactly what the chicken or the egg, which came first, how it went, but I was really a fan of Hanley's writing.
Mm-hmm. Was it always for the role that you ended up playing, or was
Yes.
there talk of you doing the lead role?
It was always for that role.
When you're doing something that intense, or like some of the other movies we talked about, are you a fun person to go home to at the end of the day? Or are you pretty much able to leave it on set? Maybe I should ask your
Kind
wife.
of not the right guy to ask. I mean, I always change a little bit. I don't come home, take that character with, but whatever the frequencies of whatever character I'm playing that I know in my own self, which I got to have those if I'm going to go play the part. I've definitely turned up the volume of those in my own self, and they carry over to how I look at the world. So I would say I try to limit it to my family going, maybe during something like that, you're a lot more quiet at that time. If I can, that means I've managed it well. That means I've managed it well on how I brought it home. Or, yeah, there's different experiences that I've had, but I try to leave it. There's something about the exit. That's the one exit and re-entry to character that I do like, at the end of the day, going home. I do not like the exit and re-entry that is during the working day. I like to get there, get up out of bed that morning, drive, think about the day in a fun way, think about my rhythm, and focus on what I got to do. And I don't want to get out of it during the day. I want to stay in it for 12 hours. But if I kept it the entire time, I think I'd just overload, and I'd rather not. I like the reset at the end of the day.
Another recent movie I want to talk about, just so fantastic. And another really great pleasant surprise was Lincoln Lawyer, which you did in 2009.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Going back to the courtroom. And I've heard you say that this was a movie you really sort of did for yourself.
Well, I said that this was a time when I remember I'd said many things to myself, and I've written a lot of them down, but one of them was, hey, let's go make the movies that the first one you pick out, McConaughey, the first one you want to go see. Whether it's in the theater or whether you're in a hotel at night, there's 20 on there. What's the first one you want to see? And I like thrillers, and I like anti-heroes like this, and I thought we could really pull off a good thriller, and I liked the character, and I liked the books, and we went to do it. And it is a movie that I like to see, and one that I like to pick out first.
But after that, I think you took a couple years off?
I think it was right before that, wasn't it?
Oh, really?
I'm not sure. You may know better than I do. Was it right after that?
It seems like there was a gap from I think Bernie came out in 2011, Lincoln Lawyer was 2009, but
maybe it was in
you
there.
Shot it. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was in there. Maybe I did that, and that was out. And I did take a couple of years off. It was a time when, starting with Lincoln Lawyer was a time when I said I wanted to recalibrate my relationship with my career. I remember saying that. I remember thinking my career's, I'm enjoying it. I love what it's given me. I like going to work. I like the things I've been doing. But everything I started reading, I felt like, it's another version of something I've done, or I feel like I could do it next week. And I remember going, well, wait a minute, before you get mad at thinking you could do something next week, that's a valid feeling. Don't just say no to something because you feel like you can naturally do it. But then I said, okay, fair. I'll shake with you on that, McConaughey. But let me find something that I don't know what to do with that next week or the week after. Let me find something that I really like, but I'm going, I'm not sure. That scares me, that shakes my floor. And I was fortunate enough, because that Schedule F check I got in Angels in the Outfield, to know that my rent was paid. I was fortunate enough to know my kids were going to eat. I was just shepherding my first son into the world. So I had that to take care of my time. And I said, it's a great time to go into the shadows and be a father and sit back and see if something turns you on from the inside or if something finds you, if you're the target that can draw the air. But we're okay. Rent's paid, kids are going to eat, we can take some time off. I know he was thinking about I'm done, but I didn't know how long the dry spell was going to go. So I said no to some of the things that were similar to what I had been doing before. And it took a while. I had to sit down with my agent and say, hey, I'm really going to do this, and I need your help with my commitment to this, because after 8 months, if the same thing comes in with a big $10 million paycheck, it starts to read better and funnier. I promise you, the same words. All of a sudden, it's kind of, I think this thing's great. I think I can find an angle. No, I can make it a different experience for me. So I said, I'm going to need your help bunkering down here and saying no to some things. And so I'm going to need you to be a gatekeeper, one, to keep them from getting to me, two, but let's be real clear. I'm looking for some different things to do. He handled that. My wife, we said, we don't know how long it's going to be dry. Then after they quit sending those, then it did get dry. Then nothing came for about a year. Wow. There's nothing. And I didn't have any sleepless nights or, oh my gosh. I was like, no, I'll find something. I'll write. I was writing a lot. I was turning myself on creatively. And as I said, I had my first son to shepherd into the world. And then the funny thing happened, the beautiful thing happened, that somehow the target drew the arrow. And I think, my opinion is, I became a new good idea by removing myself. Mm. William Friedkin calls for the first time, Steven Soderbergh calls for the first time. Somehow in that 2 years, I became a fresh new idea that I don't think I was 2-3 years prior. How that works, I'm not sure, because I didn't send a memo out. But it did happen.
What was the first script that brought you back?
I believe it was Killer Joe.
Mm. And from what I understand, you didn't like that script when you first read it.
Sick to my stomach. It did. I read it. And it matters. It matters where you are in your day or your life when you read something or even meet somebody. It really does matter where we are and how we intake what information we're giving. And I read this Killer Joe, and I was like, that's ugly. I don't want to be in that world. I remember I said, I want a steel brush and I want to go take a shower. And I called a lady that I work with who we always talk creatively about scripts and stuff, and she picks up the phone, and she knew we had read it at the same time. She picks up the phone, howling with laughter. And I'm going, what's so funny? She goes, this Killer Joe is this is amazing. This writing, it is hilarious. I'm like, what is so funny? And she goes, oh, honey, whoa, you've got to go back and read this. This Tracy Letts, this writing, this is brilliant stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I went for a run and shook it out of me and came back and sat down and read it, and I found Tracy's meter. A very specific meter all the way through the script, and I found the meter. And all of a sudden, got the laughs and got the word and was able to see it and take it in and go, oh, and now I see how this is something special. Then I met with Bill and saw his take on it, and then I was in.
It's interesting. There's one of the descriptions of Joe comes from his love interest, if that's the right word.
Dottie.
Dottie. And she says, "Your eyes hurt."
Yeah.
When you see something like that, how do you go about playing that?
Well, I never thought of playing it. You know, I mean, there has to be a lot of history and a lot of bad news behind Joe's eyes. There's a 1,000-mile stare there. And the way, you know, again with Tracy's meter, but there was a lot of that performance was about it's not a simple, normal repertoire. Joe doesn't have that. Mm-hmm. And so there's pauses that make people uncomfortable, but Joe doesn't flinch. He's very comfortable in those sciences, and he knows what he needs and what he's there to get, and he's not there to get along again. So it was just about feeling a guy who is that much of a loner, and what's the one thing that they give him? What does he get from them that he doesn't have? Family. Mm-hmm. Weird, dysfunctional, fucked up family, but family, love story, absolutely. Go to jail for that stuff, but yeah, it's love story. You know what I mean? So, you know, and plus not throwing any morality on him. This was the tale we were telling. It was not the character to play any sort of morality. And again, I've enjoyed understanding this with our job. You know, and that's as an actor, I've been trying to say. For choices, I'm not worried about morality. I'm more interested in the reality and the humanity. So yeah, that was just the weight of that guy who's you got just the imagination of. I mean, what was that guy's love relationship before that? I don't know, probably some hooker on the side of the road with a 30-second shag over in the car. You know, I mean that's all he'd ever had on the periphery on the outskirts of civilization. You know, so. And then they're almost like two aliens, those two. Yeah. And for the first time, he's finding someone that's up in his psychosphere, stratosphere, frequency, and it's odd to him, but they're two outcasts coming together. And so anyway, I didn't ever think of playing Your Eyes Hurt. Mm-hmm. It was just having a weight to the guy. And my eyes did hurt.
As someone who wanted things to work out with King Kong and Jessica Lange, how do you think things worked out with Joe and Dottie?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
How did that work out?
Are you hopeful for them?
Oh, geez, am I hopeful for Joe and Dottie?
Is it wrong that I am?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, are you hopeful for them?
Oh, I think it's like a beautiful love story.
Well,
I don't know what that says about me.
You know, at the end there, I remember the take, Friedkin had the idea about being really scared she was going to pull the trigger. And I was like, no, Joe's not scared. Joe, this would be deliverance for him from the woman that he loves. He's almost, you know, there's an ecstasy about it for him, you know.
I think it's interesting you played a contract killer in that, and then you followed that with Mud, in which you're being pursued by contract killers. What attracted you to Jeff Nichols' screenplay?
Well, if you've seen it, it's beautiful writing, and it's a really original voice, and it's a really beautiful fable, I think. And you know, he told me he had written that with me in mind 12 years prior, and it came to me, I really liked the script, and then I met with him and met a man who I felt like really had control of the words he put on the page and was able to put them to screen. That was always something that was beautiful and poetic to me when I first read it. And it's a film, that I'm really, really, truly honored with. I really adore that film. And it's the one I look most forward to sitting down and watching with my kids. They're not old enough yet. They're 5, 4, and 1, but still. And most of these that we're talking about and we're going to be talking about, they're not going to be seeing for a real long time. So that's one that may be the first one I can get in there.
Yeah.
You know, but it was beautiful. It was this you know, this sort of loner drifter who lived up in the clouds and was such an aristocrat of the heart, such a dreamer and a romantic that it was clear to me that Mud's that kind of guy that, boy, if he ever did come down to the ground, if he ever did come down to reality and understand that, hey, you're chasing this woman, man, he'd die. I mean, literally die. And so there's something beautiful and sad about that. And that's when I say aristocrat of the heart. He was such a noble heartsman. But also, you know, a guy who says he's old Mud, he's stepped in shit so many times, he thinks it's good luck now. You know? That guy.
Yeah.
It's been happening to him. He was a beautiful character and a beautiful story.
You've worked with some of the biggest stars in the world. What's it like to work with newcomers like Ty Sheridan and Jacob Lofland? I don't know if either of them had acted at that point.
Well, Ty had done something with Terrence Malick.
Right, Tree of Life.
But it's refreshing, and it's also, there's a sort of inherent, at least I've taken inherent mentorship of taking on something like that, where I'm the elder statesman, you know, where I'm going to set the pace about our work ethic and how we go about things. And I took some pride in that, and they were completely up for it. But it was great because I kind of treated them like Mud did. That was really fun to be around, but I could snap at them at any time, so I kept them just kind of a little off balance. But we had a good time. And also working with youth, they remind us what we're playing make-believe.
Yeah.
You know, it's been one of the favorite things about having children for me. And you working with these two young men coming up through adolescence, and you see they're seeing things for the first time. And that's a great thing for us as actors at any time, to just be reminded to see things for the first time. And so I had, you know, in that film, Mud's as much of an adolescent as they are in some ways. As much of he's kept the youth of his heart anyway. But working with them, that was the real refreshing thing of that, is that I was, you know, I knew that I was setting the pace for how they were looking up to me as Mud and how I was going. So I enjoyed that, and also just had a great time with them. I didn't treat him like a father, because Mud never treated him like a father. You know, I treated him more like the fun guy you want to spend your summer on the island with, but could be dangerous and is dangerous.
Well then, thankfully you got away from all this killing and followed that with Magic Mike.
Yeah. That's a fun one, isn't it?
Yeah. For which, by the way, you won, I'm going to say, your first Independent Spirit Award. And many people, myself included, felt you deserved an Oscar nomination.
Dallas.
for a character ironically named Dallas.
How
did that role come to you? And I mean, it's obvious when you see it on screen, but what was the attraction?
You mean, well, I get the attraction to the role?
Yeah.
Well, Steven Soderbergh calls. He'd never called me before. That's a great call to get. He pitches it to me, the whole story, and then he goes, this guy, he's a retired stripper, he's running the strip joint, he really wants to be the best at it, he's a real capitalist. And I'm on my one knee laughing, and he goes, you know, you play this straight, McConaughey, this could be hilarious. And I said I was in. So then I read it, and it's the kind of character that, I mean, he's Barnum and Bailey, he's a rapper, he thinks he's Zeus, you know, so it was very natural. I found his voice very quickly. Mm-hmm. I knew I didn't need to go do a lot of technical work to study. I went to one club and saw how they do it, but it was basically like, no, this guy, I know the main thing is, if I base everything off of capitalism, meaning we need our job, everything you can look around and do to get as much money out of their purses into our pocket. That's what we do. So my mind just went, and I was like, well, we need someone at the door. And if I'm at the door, I need to teach the guys that let me know who pulls up in a Mercedes, let me know who pays with a credit card, let me know who pulls out Benjamins instead of 20s. We mark those women, then I send you out and you make sure to get their eye, because that's the ones we want coming back to pay the extra money for the private dance, because we know they got deep pockets. So I just, and then I went, here's my guys. I got 5 guys, I got 5 themes. Now 5 themes, I need 5 color schemes of lights, I need 5 different music cues for coming out. I need every dance to be another piece of a female fantasy, even if it's like a comedy. It was like a WWF, I was thinking WWF characters in wrestling. It was like, so it was so much fun to create on that. And then everything I would throw and I would write, I've told this story, but it's so fun. I'd write all these things. I wrote 9 pages of riffs, of scenarios of Dallas, what he would be doing and how he would handle a situation. I write it and I send it to our director, Steven Soderbergh. I'm anticipating. I can't wait to see what he says. I'm kind of nervous, you know, what's he going to say? I hope I'm on the right track and he's happy with where I'm going. 1 day, nothing. 2 days, nothing. 3 days, nothing. 4 days later, it comes up, his email. I'm like, oh, there it is. I clear the room. I make sure I've got an hour. You know, I've got things handled because I want to sit down and get into this, my director's response here. I sit down, man, I got the laptop and I'm sure. And so he was just like, fly, man.
Is it true it was your idea to have Dallas play drums?
We thought that was very apropos to have. Yeah, well, I wanted to accompany Tito de Puerto Rico. I wanted to play some congas, bongos there, I think they were. And then for, what's the instrument for Tarzan? Well, that's a djembe. That's the original drum, the big one, the deep jungle sound. So, you know, definitely.
And those are really your drums, I believe.
I know for a fact that the djembe was mine, because not many people have djembes, but I have a large, beautiful collection of different drums from around the world that I've gathered. And that was my djembe. And again, those were things where I was like, how's this guy introduce the show? How do you keep the rhythm? Because the shows I had seen were sloppy and there were big dead spaces. We were like, we gotta get the women in here and have energy and it has to be a show. And if you ever have a spot where it's a dead spot, women get up, they go to the bathroom, maybe they leave, we have to keep them on them and we have to be a full, all leading up to the finale, the piece de resistance, Mr. Magic Mike. You know, he had to be my guy. He had to be my number one, my low handicap guy, So, yeah, it was so much, as you can see, it was so much fun. I was making a circus. And Steven was like, sure.
Because you were playing a retired stripper, you probably thought that you wouldn't have to wear the revealing wardrobe.
Well, no, in that phone call, the very initial phone call, Steven goes, you know, in the script now that you're going to get, that Dallas doesn't dance or perform or anything, but I kind of think it'd be a great idea if he did. So Steve, and I remember on the phone going, nah, just as I'm going, nah, in this ear, it's going, are you kidding me, man? You have to. You cannot go be in a male strip movie and at least not try it out. So I was like, I'm sure it's a great idea, Steven, yes, because if I say no, I will regret it for the rest of my life. I will not go wimping, yes. And so then it was about, I remember I had this really great time finding my song. And one thing that led to that was I went and I saw Channing dance. And so I saw him dance and I went, well, I'm not doing hip hop. Because the best I could get is second place. I mean, this guy can dance, man. So I was like, I gotta find my, and I was jogging in New Orleans and Calling Dr. Love came on. And this is another great Steven story. Calling Dr. Love, I go, that's it, old school, it's lascivious, it's so balanced, that's right, Calling Dr. Love. I write Steven, Calling Dr. Love I think is Dallas's song. I don't hear anything back from him, but the next day the music supervisor calls and they go, we have cleared Calling Dr. Love. And it's cleared as your song to work at your choreography too.
Wow.
Yeah.
What happened to the giant painting of you with the snake?
I hope I have that. Let me tell you how this call goes on. You work with Steven, it's the most collaborative set in the world, very much like it was on Dazed and Confused early on. But you're talking to the costume designer who has an idea, you know, while we're talking wardrobe, the set decorator comes in and he goes, what kind of stuff would Dallas have? I go, Dallas likes a lot of Dallas. So Dallas, you know, he goes, would maybe he have a marble torso of himself? I'm like, yes. And then he goes, on a grand white piano? I'm like, yes. And then the costume designer says yes, and then in picture I go, his mantle it would be him. It would be Dallas. And then the costume designer goes, maybe with like a yellow python around his neck. I'm like, yes. And again, the next night, you're called down to set. I wasn't supposed to work, called down to set, show up to set. There's a photographer and a yellow python. And so we get in the leathers, get greased up, and there we are. And next thing you know, it's in the scene. So much fun.
Although actually, I think your most revealing outfit is the one you wear just in rehearsal.
That was really fun. That was the first scene in that movie. She's talking about the scene where I teach the young guy, the newcomer, the ropes. First scene we shot, and I knew coming in that I was loaded for bear, and I knew that I needed Dallas to make a real entry, right? So it was gym. We're all at the gym working out. And I remember the wardrobe was there's a lot of Rydell and Champion, like gray sweats and stuff. I was like, no. This is about our bodies. This is about revealing. We need skin tight. Yeah. And so he pulls out these he goes, Speedo? I go, so now we're on it. Come on, we'll get close. So we get these little, whatever those things are. And then this half shirt that's a size too small. I'm like, here we go. And then he pulls out tennis shoes. I'm like, no, it's not tennis shoes. It's more, it's Baryshnikov. It's Baryshnikov meets, who's the guy? Who's the guy who does the curly hair? Ed Simmons?
Oh, Richard Simmons?
Richard Simmons meets Baryshnikov. So I said, ballet shoes. Yes, ballet shoes. And then we get the hat, and then, we were off. And it was like, okay, get in there. And I remember going in, and he shot all that one take.
Wow.
One shot, I'm sorry. We shot it a couple times, but it was all one shot. He just saw us kind of walk through a bit of it. He doesn't want you to rehearse heavy, but I said my movements would kind of be here, and Steven sits off to the side, and then next thing you know, he's got a camera and he's moving around. You do the shot, and it's like, okay, scene done, because he found a way to use the mirror and everything, did it all in one take, one shot.
People forget that Magic Mike is an independent film. It was
$7 million film.
Unbelievable. And I'm assuming $6 million of that was yours. So.
You assume incorrectly.
Well, it's funny because looking at these 2 years with Bernie and Mud and Magic Mike and Killer Joe, I'm curious. Is this the first time you lost money?
The last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. First 2 years of my career, I lost money.
Wow. Because Dallas Buyers Club also.
Dallas Buyers Club, I got a little mailbox money. I had a little piece of the back end on that.
Oh, nice.
Not this year, last year and the year before, with Frailty, I'd lost a little bit of money, but again, it was, well worth it. And as I said, I'd saved up enough and taken care of my money from before where my lifestyle didn't have to change at all, But these doggone kids' schools starting to get pretty expensive these days.
Before we get to Dallas Buyers Club, I want to talk about the other amazing movie you did last year. I know Mud was released last year, but I still think of that as a 2012 film. Mm-hmm. Wolf of Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you.
How does that role come to you? What's it like to get the call from Martin Scorsese?
That's a wonderful call. I remember that very distinctly. Martin Scorsese would like to meet you. There's a role in this movie he must talk to you about. I'm in New York. I'm getting driven over to his place, and I remember this going through my head. I was like, this is the guy I studied his guy's films in college, and now I'm going over to meet him. And then another little trump my gesture. I was like, no, you're not, McConaughey. Someone's driving you to go meet him. And I was like, we're doing okay, McConaughey. So I get out of the car and I go knock on the door, and I went in and he wasn't there, and I was in this room. It was full of all this stuff of his awards and stuff, and he came in, and immediately it was obvious, one, how smart and how knowledgeable about film he is, but two, boy, I was like, this guy loves funny. He really loves funny. And so he pitched the role, and I went back and read it, and it was one of those, again, a real launch pad, a real launch pad role. I mean, a real lightning bolt of a role that they're not all like that, but you get something like that. You get something like a Dallas. You get something like a Wooderson News. A lot of times what happens is you'll see a couple of lines that they write that are so brilliant, so it gives so much identity to the character that creatively, my imagination will just run. And, David Wooderson in Dazed and Confused. 3 lines, but one of the lines is, "That's what I love about those high school girls. I get older, but they stay the same age." Now you read a line like that and you go, "Who's this guy?" You know? And so if you're going, boy, if a guy really believes that, literally, let's water this tree and see, you know. So the dialogue can flow from there. Again, Mark Hanna was that type of character as well. It's a great scene where he takes the Leonardo Belfort character to lunch to show him the ropes. And what's already written by Terrence Winter is, you know, how many times a week do you jack off? Let me tell you the secret to what this business, hookers and cocaine. I mean, you're already going, well, who's this guy? And if he really believes that, well, then the vernacular, I just played and ran and came in with a whole bunch of scenarios, and I went in and did it, and Marty liked it, thankfully, and he rolled with it, and that was a lot of fun.
And I understand Mark Hanna's infamous chest beating is actually something you do.
That's something I do, yeah.
That got worked into the movie.
Yeah, it's a rhythm thing, it's a relaxation thing that relaxes me, gets my voice down lower, especially if you're shooting early in the morning, especially if you're stepping into a Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio film for one day and you're nervous. Listen, gotta get it down, find your own rhythm so I can. And so I was doing it before each scene, and I do that a lot before scenes to relax myself. I was doing it, and then now we're ready for action, and I start the scene. Well, we got 5 takes down, and I was happy. Martin was happy. He goes, "Okay, we got it. I love it. Let's move on." And Leonardo says, "Hang on a second, Martin. Hey, what's that thing you're doing before the scene?" And I told him what I just told you. I do it to relax. It gets me down. And he's like, "What if you put that in the scene?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So we shoot, and I do it at the beginning, like Mark's in his own world, and then I give him my spiel. And then after I think he's got it, I decided to pick it back up and include him, like, now you have the baseline, you understand the common denominator of how this world works. Come on, do it with me. And then he starts doing it. And that was it.
And then I love that it comes back later in the movie, and
Yeah,
he's
he
still
brought
doing
it back.
it.
Leo wrote me after they had went and filmed for another 5 months, and he goes, "I carried the torch, man." He goes, "It comes back. I took it later in the film. I was like, I can't wait to see this."
Is that something you've always done from the beginning of your career?
It's always been music's always been something that I like and helps me relax and I can relate to and get in my own. It relaxes me, and so, you know, I'll always take something. I'm always whistling or banging on something to find the rhythm. And every character has a different rhythm, so I'll work out a whole different soundtrack for each character, and it'll be a different rhythm that I'll take to that character. So that was what was for Mark Hanna. And then you don't want to take a pair of drums to the drums aren't as relaxing as playing yourself because you're actually you're physically, you know. I mean, Maori, the warriors and stuff do that. That's part of that it's a version of that. I'm not trying to imitate that, but it's something that it's a chant, and it focuses me and gets me out of my head, and it'll be a different rhythm for different characters.
I believe when you shot Wolf of Wall Street, you had already signed on to do Dallas Buyers Club.
I was already headed down, yes.
So you had already started losing the weight.
Yeah, I'd lost 30 pounds at that point, and then I pressed pause for the 3 days that I went to work on that.
And I do want to get to Dallas Buyers Club. I'm so sorry, my watch died. Can someone tell me what time it is? Because he has...
8:20.
Okay, we got 10 minutes, sorry.
I give these long answers.
I looked down at my watch and I was like, it can't still be 7:45. Yes, it is. It's 7:45. So we have an hour to talk about Dallas Buyers Club.
Right.
Such a beautiful movie, such a beautiful script. I know you would have clapped longer, but we're short on time, and that's the only reason you stopped. This is one of those scripts that had been in the business for like 20 years,
20 years.
I think. How and when did it find its way to you?
Found me, I think about 5 years ago. And I'm not sure. It was something that came to me. It was not an offer. It was something that was, I think, pitched to me as a really great unmade script that had been around. That's how it got to me. And then I just made sure that I didn't lose it. I did everything I could to not make sure I didn't lose it, because every time I tried to say, okay, let's go make it, no one was interested in making it. And then there came a time while we were working, I was like, okay, Dallas Buyers Club's we got to do that later. It fits in this year, and I'm gonna put it in that slot. And it was like in the fall. And we were like, okay, but it's not real. We don't have to find it. So we're like, no, we'll get that. It's happening in the fall. And part of getting that made, then Jean-Marc, he and I meet. He's interested, so some pieces come together. And what we did is we didn't flinch. Once we said we're going to make it in that fall, we didn't flinch. When people go, what? You can't. You don't have the money for it, which we didn't. We're like, oh no, we'll get it. It's coming. We got it. We're gonna make it in the fall. And we just never flinched. And I remember I never had any doubt. Maybe I talked myself into it, obviously, because hell, I was wrong. There wasn't money. It caught up with us like right as we were making it. It caught up with us. The money fell out. What money was there? Money had fallen out of this thing so many times. What money was there and told to be real turned out to not be real just a few weeks before we started shooting. And then by that time, Jean-Marc and I had been working on the script, and I had already, I was already into this guy and had lost a bunch of weight. And someone said, we may have to push to spring. And I didn't. I was like, no, we're not pushing to spring. We're doing it this fall. We're going. Set the date. We're there. And something about that, and I wasn't the only one doing that. There was others too, the producers and Jean-Marc. Something about that. It's weird how some things can get made in this town by just blindly saying, no, it's happening, and if you get enough momentum and don't even consider the other options. Because if we'd have flinched and said, spring? Even that would have been too much.
Yeah.
It would have left a sliver of light open for someone to go, oh, okay, at least it's possible. Then the things that happened just probably wouldn't have happened. So yeah, I'd said yesterday it was turned down 86 times. I got corrected last night. It turned out the real count was it's been turned down 137 times.
Wow.
So that is like, I don't know what makes this so much fun.
Yeah.
This is we were never after the result with that. Just the getting of it made was so visceral but now it's around. It's a year later, and the movie translates, and then we're getting people talking about the film, the message, our roles. That makes me very proud to be here talking about it, because there was so much skin left in the game by so many people to get it made. Yeah.
Can you say what the budget and shooting schedule ended up being?
Yes, it was $4.9 million. We shot it in 25 days.
Jeez, that's relentless.
Yeah, 25 days.
Obviously, the physical transformation is amazing, but the performance, aside from that, is phenomenal. What sort of research did you do in order to play this character?
Well, luckily, Craig Borton, the original writer, had close to 20 hours of transcripts of his initial interview with Ron Woodruff. And this is a Ron Woodruff who already had a Buyers Club, who already had HIV. That was very important, because the way everything from the facts, the import of the words, and just different ideas that gave me different variations on scenes, but also the way he spoke. This guy would speak like a very medical, scientific, Harvard grad, and in the middle of his talking, he'd slip off into the fucking conspiracy theory about these motherfuckers, and then he'd come back and then tell a great joke about something, and say something to the lady in the room, and then lose his train of thought. What was I talking about? He'd do this all the time. There were these really hard right angles in the way he thought, but yet he was almost like a baby bird in a nest, the way he would come out of his neck, and he was just voracious like that. About once he got a track on once he ran into opposition, the way he practiced his rage to go either through an opposition or around it or find a loophole was fascinating with this guy. Then I go see his family, who they opened up their doors to me. I drove down and found them in a small town. Opened up their doors, their scrapbooks. They were so honest about who the guy was. You know, you talk to a family member, especially about someone who's now deceased, and you're gonna go make a film about him, it's pretty hard for them not to glorify. They did not. They said who he was. They said who he was not. They said he was a son of a bitch. Man, he stole my cars, took all my volume, and I still had to love him. But they loved him. They said he couldn't help but love him, but boy, he was a son of a bitch. So they were so honest about him. That was really helpful. Then the other thing they did, which was my secret weapon, is they gave me his diary that he had kept for years, and this was pre-HIV. So that's the thing where I got in that spot where, okay, put a blindfold on me, take me to Neptune, take off the blindfold, roll the camera, I can be this guy. Because I knew his Socratic dialogue now. Now I got the guy's monologue. Now I've got the inside track. Who's the guy? Before, he's not selling anything. This is him home at night, alone, lonely, getting high, trying to get the hell out of there, wondering what the fuck's life about. Because electrician shit isn't working out, man. I'm sitting there and I charged my batteries for my pager tomorrow morning. I ironed my shirt and nobody's calling. So I'm going to, Wendy's to get her Sonic, to get a burger, because the girl Shelly will give me a double for the price of a single, because I don't have the money for that, plus she's kind of cute. And I'm there till 3 p.m., and 3 weeks later, it's in the journal entry, me and Shelly shagged in room 62. And he's, so this is a guy who was wandering. He was a small town wandering. And he'd invent these things, he couldn't finish any of them. Couldn't finish a relationship, wouldn't finish anything he invented. He had a brilliant mind. Yeah. That's where I got the mono. That was my secret weapon, that. And they shared that with me.
I assume that they have seen the film. What was their response to it?
We've talked through email, and we've spoken through email and a couple of phone calls. They're happy with the film and the representation. It was a little overwhelming for them, obviously. Got 2 hours of somebody's life thrown on a big screen, compacted. I mean, the amount of history that must have come rushing through them. But they're happy with it.
So in the year where you will likely receive your first Oscar nomination, this Thursday, I am pretty sure you're also going to win an Emmy for your work on True Detective. To do a TV series at this point in your career, what drew you to that material?
The writing. It really was. I got sent 2 episodes, the first 2 episodes. And the writing was the voices were so original, the identities were so clear. And I hadn't read anything like it. I was like, who are these guys? And they came to me for the role of Hart. And I understood why they came to me for Hart. And I liked Hart, but what I couldn't wait, I remember writing this down, I said, every page I turned, I couldn't wait to see what came out of Rustin Cole's mouth. And I read that, Cary Fukunaga, Sin Nombre, I was a fan. I was like, okay, this is the pedigree. This is good. I've never done TV before, but so what? This is quality material. The first 2 episodes are so good. The writer can't screw up the next 6. He's created a world and he's already on a track here that's so original. Just don't get off that track. Don't get off these voices. And so I said, I'm in, but I want Cole. And they said, okay. And then we said, what about Woody? And he came on his Heart and we were off. And yeah, it's got some, it's good. It's good.
So tell us how it ends.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice little romantic comedy. And I find I chase after Marty Hart on a moped in a wedding dress. Yeah.
I would see that. I would. I am so sorry that I ran out of time.
I think we covered everything, though, didn't we?
Yeah.
Kinda?
Yes.
Anything else?
I could go on for another hour and a half just about Dallas Buyers Club.
I could too. I love this.
Yeah.
This is really fun.
Thank you for a
Thank you
beautiful
all.
performance. Thank you for being here.